Welcome to Philosophers.
The Business of Benefits is your no BS, no sales guide to real solutions.
No gimmicks, just the truth about how to take control, transform your benefits, and care for your most valuable asset, your people.
If you're tired of the same old sales pitch and you're ready to rethink your benefits, this podcast is for you. The truth is out there. Are you ready to hear it? Today, we've got a special episode. So we came up with this idea of doing a human resources special. So the Business of Benefits is generally about exposing a lot of the fraud, waste, and abuse in healthcare plans and really tuning into how to create a business plan for your benefits, right? Because it's healthcare financing, it's not health insurance. So there can be a true strategy behind all of your benefits programs. So that's normally what we talk about. You'll hear a little bit of that today. But what you're going to hear a little bit more of is things that are specific to human resources. How does a human resource professional go from being an HR manager to a CHRO? What are those skill sets needed that make you become more strategic? How do you get a seat at the table? What kind of data? How do you listen to your people? What else goes into total rewards, right? So we definitely touch on benefits in this episode, but then we go into really interesting conversations like unlimited PTO, Uber driver credits, which I didn't even know was a thing. So we're going to hear a lot from Andy Najjar. He is the COO at FutureSolve. Awesome guy, has his own podcast, which he'll mention. It's called the Strategic HR Show. So this is an HR special. Again, it's for all of our human resource professionals out there. We know that you love this content. Let us know what you think. Like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you later. Welcome, everybody, back to the Business of Benefits. We have a special guest today, Andy Najjar, COO of FutureSolve. And I've been lucky enough the last year to develop a good relationship with Andy, start to understand his business. We've been to conferences together, and I was actually on your podcast, and we talked about the difference between a broker and advisor. So, Andy, thank you for being here. How you doing?
No problem. Yeah, thank you for having me. Very excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, why don't you start by just giving the audience a little bit of a background on you and your company?
Yeah, Chelsea, I started my career many years ago in HR technology. So I've always been in the HR space, but mainly on the technology side of helping companies with efficiencies and automation. And in the last 4 years, I've been COO here at FutureSolve, which is a very interesting combination of both technology and advisory. So what we do is we help mid-sized companies really structure their strategy and be more strategic about their people and making sure that they're taking care of them, but also making sure that they're performing correctly or the level that they want them to, and have the efficiencies for being in business and saving money and doing it all at the same time. So how do you balance keeping people happy and motivated, as well as keeping the business happy and keeping the board happy? There's a lot of things that happen there. And so we're there to make sure that all of those are in sync.
So obviously employee benefits are, I'm sure, no small part of that. We've been seeing a lot changing in the employee benefit space with in regard to like fiduciary responsibility and some of the lawsuits that have come out. And I think this problem is finally starting to come out as something bigger than just something that should go on the human resources department, something that the executives and the CFO should be in on as well. Have you started to see that change or that conversation start to happen about kind of fiduciary responsibility, making sure they're making the right decisions, having a framework, or is it kind of happening a little bit slower?
Absolutely. And actually, I'll share a story. This is from both founders of FutureSolve, because they've been very well-known CHROs, and every time they received, a CHRO job at a really big company or at a new job that they come in, their biggest thing that they go into is actually trying to solve for the benefits. If they can have better benefits for lower costs that actually our employees are excited about, it was like a big win for them with their board. And a lot of times now, if you want to be strategic, this is a big topic to actually get a seat at the board or at the table and be listened to, is by having a creative way of doing that. I mean, one story is one of my founders went in and saved a company $40 million in benefits that first year. And obviously what happens there is it goes to the CEO and says, "We'll split it. I'll give 20 million back to the business and give me a 20 million budget so I can do great things for the rest of the company." And so it's a win-win for everybody. And so that's one of the big things is if you can really be strategic, benefits is one of the biggest arms that you can be strategic about and really make a big difference in the business.
Couldn't agree more. And I think what, sometimes doesn't get seen because they kind of unfortunately often go through the same exercise year after year with the same kind of solutions. There is so much room for impact.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about flat renewals, like I'm talking about 10, 20, 30, nearly 40% decreases. Like there are strategies out there. And I love hearing that, some CHROs are getting on that and understanding like, hey, this is the number one place to start, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it definitely it touches everybody, right? It touches the P&L and then it touches the employees, which employees are listening and looking is like, what is HR going to do? Are they listening to us? Are they bringing value? And that's something they see right away, right? Is that benefit options that they have.
Something that I've noticed, and Andy, I know you and I have kind of talked about this before, the difference between just like HR, like a normal HR function, and like strategic HR. And then, so I'd love for you to talk about like, what do you think the difference is between just like, I hate to use the word regular, but like a regular HR manager or a specialist at a company and like a true strategic CHRO or an HR director? Like, what are the differences in skill sets?
Yeah, it's different in skill set, and also you have to balance both. But that's the struggle that companies have. Is a lot of times what you call normal HR is basically compliance HR is top of mind because it's like making sure everybody's hired correctly. We're
Don't get
not going to get
sued.
sued. We don't have any sexual harassment issues. All of those things are obviously important from a day-to-day perspective. But if you don't have people or a way to actually look at the big picture of efficiencies and savings and where are we in 5 years and how can we prepare for 5 years, then you end up being inundated with the day to day, right? And so that's where FutureSolve comes in. And that's what we do with our clients is if you have people that are worried about the day to day, and there's a lot of those that there's a lot of day to day happening, we can just come in on an interim basis to really be the strategic arm for you and think for you in 5 years and think about what we can do and where we can unlock savings versus just worried about, every request we get from employees every day.
And it's so unrealistic. I mean, we speak to hundreds, probably thousands of HRs every year. With our speaking opportunities, we're definitely speaking to thousands of HRs annually, right? And the level of fatigue that I see because there's so much on their plates, like benefits and like we go and we talk about fiduciary duty and the HR hidden liability and health plans. And that if you look at these massive lawsuits that are happening, human resources, current and former, are literally being personally named, right? Like that's a problem. And they have absolutely no idea about it. And they want to care, but they're so tired. They're so burnt out. There's so much on their plate. And it's always just more and more and more. So, with that idea of like HR fatigue in mind, right? And the fact that things are constantly changing and they need to keep upskilling, what do you see as the future of the HR function?
Yeah, it's definitely automation. I mean, from the technology side, we're seeing that artificial intelligence is eventually going to be taking on a lot of the mundane tasks. So it's going to help HR get more strategic because some of the mundane tasks could be done through automation. And so if an HR team is not thinking about automation or that is on their horizon, it's coming fast. And if we don't do anything about it, it'll catch up really quick. So we need to definitely be strategic about how we use automation and technology to reduce some of that mundane tasks and compliance, and that could be all done automatically while we be more strategic, right? The strategic side is not going to be automated. You have to be strategic. You have to learn those skills. You have to learn, how a people function is important to the business. It's one of their most expensive assets, and you have to think of it that way versus they're just, people that are doing stuff for the company. Like we have to really change that mindset and have a seat at the table and say, I'm here to bring an asset that could make a difference to the P&L, to the business, to where we're going, and we have to think that way. And so that's really where, HR people could either get training or mentoring or invest in that type of knowledge and skill set, because that's definitely one that's not going away and is going to be needed more and more. And so we need more people that are thinking that way.
Absolutely. So, a question I had for you was like this episode, we're kind of thinking of this episode as like our HR special, right? So, it's not 100% about benefits because you have a wealth of knowledge within HR. And what we've noticed is human resources tend to be the ones making these decisions. I know Donovan and I would argue that CFOs and CEOs, the whole C-suite needs to be involved. Number one, from a liability perspective, but just more perspectives, better questions, you're going to have a more well-rounded program, right? Um, but the question I have for you is what are other more creative ways if a business is, strapped for cash one year, they have a really terrible renewal, they're not working with an innovative broker. Yes, that was a shameless plug. They don't have ways to lower their cost and they're just stuck. What are some things they can do on the total reward side to give employees things that maybe don't cost as much as healthcare?
Yeah, there's a ton of options. I will have to say that they're very custom to the type of business you are and what you're trying to do. But I'll actually just mention a very easy example that we embarked on a few years ago. But we had a pretty large law firm that came to us, right? And what they wanted out of rewards or a total package is they wanted to attract the younger talent. They had a lot of very senior, older, lawyers, but they also know that they're missing out on some new talent that's coming out from the market. And so we did an analysis and we studied, what do these younger lawyers want and what are they trying to do? And they really wanted like a cool factor. They wanted to join a cool legal firm, and in that situation, we actually have had a couple of things that we, brought to the table to them, including like how they have their culture, their branding, their messaging, all that stuff. But one of the big ones is they all cared about Uber credits because they wanted to go out with their friends at night and have
I
Uber
didn't
credits to
expect
go back
this, I'll
home
be
without having
honest.
to drink and drive. And it was like a cool thing, and everybody was so excited about it. Hey, we get Uber credits every weekend, and it didn't cost much, but it really attracted the type of, individuals that they were, going after. But that's a very simple example, but there are other companies in different industries, whether in logistics or healthcare. You have to know what do the employees really want and what are they actually saying, and what are options that you can bring to the table that will make a difference for them, right? And so it differs very variably, but there's a lot of creative things, right? But in a lot of times it's making sure you structure the right organization using spans and layers and departments and how you report and are you listened to, and are you running lean, because if you have 10 managers and you have to manage all of the logistics that go wrong with that, that also is a lack of benefits sometimes, right? And so you have to make it streamlined. You have to have the right compensation strategy. Are you benchmarking against your industry? Are you benchmarking towards the talent you're trying to attract? What are you looking for there? And then on top of compensation, we also need to have, you know, benefits and then perks like, you know, Uber credits or discounts or other things, recognition, even like training and development is huge. Like a big thing we're seeing is just investing in them in leadership training. Whether you're a manager or not, you still need professional leadership training on how to be a leader from within, how to show up with your team, how to effectively collaborate, how to understand that if I work with multiple departments and making sure that the knowledge is transferred equally across the board, we're better as a company. All of those things, they're not just inherited through talent, right?
Right.
You have to invest.
Yeah, you have to
And
create
so
it like a culture.
exactly. I mean, like, our founders always say, like, if there was $1 left in the budget, it's going to go to the frontline leadership program because they know that actually brings the most ROI. If you don't have ways to save on benefits and other things, there are things that you can invest in today that you can do that. And actually, with leadership training, I want to mention that, but FutureSolve has access to government grants. So a lot of these leadership programs, if you even don't have budget for it, we can actually ask the government to pay for some of those programs because they know that if you're investing in people, they're less likely to be on unemployment, they're more likely to stay employed, and so it helps the entire economy.
Yeah, 100%. So when you were talking about, like Uber credits, right? Something that immediately popped in my mind, Donovan and I were having dinner with one of our employees last night. We did like a big uh, annual planning session, included one of our employees in it this year. And like all the things you're talking about were part of the conversation, right? And at dinner, like unlimited PTO came up. Not any, nobody was necessarily in favor or not in favor of it. It was just a topic of conversation. First, I want to hear from Donovan on
Is that
your opinion.
is that a disclaimer for our employees listening? Like, hey,
Yeah,
this was
ethos benefits.
yeah, waitress said it. We didn't say it.
Yeah,
I don't know what
exactly.
happened. No, I don't have an opinion of it. I mean, honestly, like I feel like nobody on our team would abuse it,
No, they
but it
wouldn't.
is still it's a scary thing to throw out there, isn't it? Like,
Yeah, so currently, and Andy, maybe you can benchmark us. I mean, we did benchmarking yesterday on so many different metrics in our agency, and it was incredibly powerful. Like to know where you stand compared to like the national benchmarks. And in our case, it was exciting because we were like further ahead, we pay higher, like all those things. Super exciting. So I highly recommend to anyone listening, especially like HRs, if you haven't done compensation analysis or any types of benchmarks with regards to your total rewards program, like FutureSolve is very good at it. Just do it, figure out how to do it because it's how can you know where you're going if you don't know where you are, right? So super powerful. But how do you feel about unlimited PTO? Do you see a lot of companies doing this?
Yes, actually, it's become a big trend. It's definitely industry specific. Like if you're in logistics, you can't necessarily do that, or in retail, but a lot of the corporate companies are definitely moving in that direction because we're finding that when you empower people to make their own decisions and give them some freedom, they're not abusing it. They're actually embracing it. And actually, they're working more than when they actually had 2 weeks. And if you don't use the 2 weeks, you won't get it. They'll actually take the 2 weeks because they know they're not going to get it back. When unlimited PTO comes, they just take it when they need to. And sometimes they even take less than what's usually taken on a allocated number of PTO per year. So we are seeing that. And obviously after COVID and the pandemic, that changed a lot because now people want more freedom. Even like work from home is not 100% these days, but still everybody likes to be at home 1 or 2 days a week is the average. And so it gives also some balance, some freedom in doing that. And so we need to think about how we're moving the workforce to the future. And everybody is now expecting these things and they're comparing against companies that are offering them. And so if we're saying, we're a company that you only gives you 10 days and you have to come here from 8 to 5 every day and we'll see you in the office. Some of these things may actually hurt you because you think you're bringing value by bringing ROI of work, but you're missing out on some really key talent and also missing out on when people are balanced, they actually produce better, right? And more. And so you want them to be operating at their balance versus always being stressed or I have a plumber coming home and how do I really leave work to even do that when I could really do it while not missing work, And so those are things that we just need to think about as we're designing these programs.
And it's like with us, with our employees, something that I've really loved about the culture that we've built, and I'm sure you see this in other companies too, just this idea of like we're humans first, right? Like we have families to take care of, we have health, we have mental health, we have all these things going on, right? And it's like caring about the human first. And what I've noticed, and that's been kind of our value since day one, but we've really worked on that the last 5 years. And it's really powerful to see like a culture speak for itself and like people like our own people are like talking about our values and they're using those words and but it is a very intentional process, right? And it's like it's not very tangible. Like sure, we've got 15 days of PTO and 11 holidays and you like blah blah blah. Sure, those things are in the handbook, they're tangible. But like the less tangible things about a culture, right? Like the values and all of that, how important is that in the work you do? And how do you teach an HR? Like if your fractional CHRO is going in to a company, like how are they taking the intangibles and making them a reality?
Absolutely. It all starts with something we call alignment, so company alignment. So we look at all different types of factors. We have a way to measure it, but it includes like mission, vision, the areas of competencies and skills that you need, the cultural pieces, how do you recognize people? Like all of those things need to be measured to say, are we completely aligned from the top to the bottom, or do you only see all that stuff really great at the top and then nobody knows anything about it at the bottom, right? And so you have to make sure that it's fully aligned. But there's also very simple things, and these are like things we always mention is, it's how you word things and how you think about it. Like the reason we're moving away from human resources, because resource is like a word that we always look at as something that a company owns or has access to, right? And then the other thing is we're moving to chief people officer or the people department because now we're talking about as people. Another big one is a lot of companies still use talent acquisition. Well, what are we acquiring? We're not acquiring people, we don't own them. It's now the new word is what we always say is talent access. We're accessing the talent for the areas we need, right? We're not acquiring anybody. And so these are old terms of how we looked at talent before. It's like our talent, we're bringing them in, we acquired them, but that's not the new age that we're actually embarking on and we're living through, right? And so we want to make sure that we, even just from how we name departments or people in our company, it should represent some of those values and cultures that we want to actually make sure that we have in the company.
Language is the oxygen of creation, and I love the way of being so intentional about how things are named. I wanted to throw it over to Donovan for a minute to talk a little bit, and then I want to hear your opinion on it, Andy, about acquisitions and like how FutureSolve gets involved in maybe some mergers and acquisition activity. Because I think a huge, in our experience, and this isn't current clientele necessarily, but we've just seen that sometimes the people part is kind of an afterthought when we're going through mergers and acquisitions, but also an afterthought is the benefits of the acquiring company. And something that Donovan's been doing an amazing job of the last 2 years is like evaluating risk. So just wanted you to talk a little bit about that within like a benefits program on the financial side. And then Andy, maybe you could talk about like the human transition in M&A activity.
Yeah, absolutely. We do a lot of that. We support, like for example, a big one we see is in private equity. Private equity, the big thing they focus on is financials, sales, and revenue, right? Those are the three things. And people takes a back seat, benefits takes a back seat, compensation takes a back seat. But when you end up not, focusing on that or actually even giving some time to it, and you merge two companies and they're like completely different on their comp or completely different on their benefits, and they're supposed to work together, it creates chaos, right? And so having somebody that actually manages that piece with a PE firm is really key. And this was what we do is we come in and really help them make sure that the people side is aligned with the financial strategy, the sales strategy, the revenue strategy, and making sure that everybody is benchmarked and aligned together and having a very seamless way to go into that next structure. Because you lose a lot of great talent if you don't do that, and we don't want to do that because there's a lot of gems in the company that we're actually merging together, and that's why we're bringing it together in the first place.
Yeah, we've seen that. And also when you're trying to match two separate companies and their employee benefits, like we've seen a lot of struggle with companies doing that because, maybe one company has a heavier contribution, they offer more employer paid lines, and then they're trying to bring these two companies together without maybe offering that to the whole bunch, which might be a little tough on the budget. So we've definitely seen that kind of stuff be a challenge. Any recommendations in that in just kind of merging two separate companies ahead of time, like having a well thought out plan?
Yeah, again, it's the strategy. If you're doing a merger where they're going to become one brand, you have to think about what's the cost of that and how do we make them actually become one brand or one operations. But if they're merging to still be two different companies and two different brands and doing different things, you could have some deviation there, and it depends on how you structure it. Again, spans and layers, who they report to, how they're divided into their different groups and departments, because that makes a difference as well on how you structure it. But it's a case by case for sure. And it's also an evaluation of risk. You know, if we do go down on our benefit coverage for everybody, so we can make it all work, what does that look like? Now, the good thing is with AI and predictability and all that, there's tools that could connect to different data sets, and then we can actually predict scenarios of if we do that, what could happen, and that helps with the decision making power.
So I've spoken to some M&A attorneys recently, and I'm always just blown away. And I want someone to tell me that I'm like crazy here because like a company is being acquired, right? And we're looking at the benefits from the perspective of who's losing coverage, who's gaining coverage, how much are the contributions, what's the total cost for the company, which employees are paying more, what are the deductibles. But I think the whole like the part that Donovan and I talk about constantly is like why behind like before that, why is nobody looking at the financial risk or the risk within the health plan for the sale? Like to impact purchase price, right?
Yeah, certainly.
Nobody's talking about it. I brought it up to an M&A attorney, one of the top in the country, and they were literally like, "Yeah, I don't know why. Nobody really thinks about that. Like we just look at the total premium." I'm like, "Yeah, and then you've got a like gene therapy drug coming in on the plan and it's going to quite literally double next year. Like why is nobody looking at that risk? And like I know Donovan has the skill set to do so and we're starting to get into that market, but it just blows my mind that these really intelligent people aren't thinking about this. What else do you think on that?
Yeah, they're just we see the same. They're just so focused on just the overall revenue financials that they don't dig into the rest of it. But if you do, there's probably better ways to do a really nice transition with the right people and the right benefits and the right engagement, and then win big. And so there are some. I'm not saying PE firms are not doing it. I'm seeing the more sophisticated, larger PE firms have recognized that and have started to do that. But there's a lot of PE VC firms that are a lot smaller that don't have the capacity or the knowledge of where to start, and so it gets just swept under the rug.
One thing that the attorney told me, she's like, so every once in a while, we'll find something like that and we'll use it. I think she called it like the 11th hour negotiation. Like, wait until the very, very, very end and then be like, by the way, you've got this crazy drug.
To
And
retrade.
yeah, yes, that was the
Yeah.
word.
Yeah, retrade. I think they look at it as, they'll de-risk the new company coming in after, after they actually purchase it, because obviously they're not in power to make those changes. But I think what's missing is the evaluation of it.
Exactly.
That could help them. Not necessarily retrading is kind of a bad thing because essentially you agree to a deal in principle, and then it's someone coming back and retrading, asking for discounts, credits. So not necessarily desirable, but I do feel like it's important for any company to know like what is the actual risk out there, because we've seen companies get 47% increases, even 110% increases on their health insurance premiums. So stuff like that certainly makes a difference if you know that company's headed in that direction. To your point, gene therapy drugs that are 1 million to 1.5 million a piece, it's a factor.
It's a factor. So, Andy, last question for you. For all of the HRs listening out there, what is your biggest piece of advice for them to continue growing, upskilling, and really making an impact for the people they serve?
Yeah, I think we all have to invest in ourselves, continue to learn. We have a lot of resources that are free that we offer, including playbooks and strategies and podcasts and blogs and reports that we generate from a thought leadership perspective. So definitely utilize all that. And then if you are definitely thinking about getting a even a more important seat at the table, we do some CHRO or strategic HR mentoring. And so if you work with a mentor that has had that responsibility and get some coaching, it's really, really important. So don't think of it as if I bring FutureSolve, my founders are going to, or my CEO and my board is going to think I don't know enough. Think of it as I know my weaknesses and I'm going to address them by bringing this to the table, and they'll definitely respect you for it.
Absolutely. Well, I have to say, having met a lot of the Future Solve advisors and being on some calls, hearing you guys and what you're doing, like it's an incredibly impressive group of people. I think I really feel like you guys are cream of the crop in terms of like talent and strategy and all the things. So it's been a pleasure having you on here today. For all of our listeners, please, Andy, what's the name of your podcast so they can go find it?
The Strategic HR Show.
Perfect. So we'll link it in the show notes to Strategic HR Show. Andy, thank you so much for joining us here on the Business of Benefit.
Thanks, Andy.